friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another video in the series Booklist Thursday. Every week on a Thursday, I try to go through a book list of some sort and discuss with you how many of the books I've read and challenge you to see how many of the books you've read so we can discuss the books or our participation in the comments. So today's video, we're going to be talking about the books for the Booktube prize. And no, this is not a spoiler because the finals round is still going on. I'm judging fiction this round and I'm really excited to share with you my thoughts on the books. But we're not at that point yet, so we're going to go back in time a little bit. And if you're wondering what is the Booktube prize, hey, where have you been? But the Booktube prize is Booktubers' version of a book prize. We go through the books that were published last year and see which of those books we consider to be the best literary fiction that was published in the prior year. So at the beginning of, well, I should also say the Booktube prize is organized by Robert from Barter Hordes, and at the beginning of the year he submits a long list of titles from last year for us to consider, and he asks us to choose which books we think should be considered for the first round of the Booktube prize. So we go through the octafinals, the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and now the finals round. So there are 4 rounds. Each round lasts about 2 months, and the judges for each round decide which books advance, right, by popular vote. So or electoral college. Bad joke. But yeah, so before the octafinals round, the people who will be judges get an opportunity to choose which books will actually get to that quarterfinals round. So there is a round before the octafinals is what I'm saying. And today I'm going to shed a little bit of light on how I chose those books. So again, it's a long list and I'll show you a screenshot here that will show you the titles that were being considered with the check marks for the ones that I submitted. And so I think we were able to choose about 20 titles. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to say that I chose 19 because those are the screenshots that I have surviving on my phone since January 2022. So yeah, here are the titles that we looked at. So on the first screenshot, you'll see 2 titles that I picked, and I don't have physical copies because I read them as ebooks from my library. So there's Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney, which I read and really liked. I'd read another book by Sally Rooney previously and didn't like that as much. Really liked this one, thought the writing was a little bit different but very engaging. The characters were not completely lovable, which I think is how characters should be. I mean, people in our lives are not completely lovable, right? But we just make a decision that we're going to love them, and there's that. So yeah, I really like this book and happy that I chose it because it made it into the rounds. I probably wouldn't have read it if it wasn't a candidate. So yeah, kudos to me for picking this book. So Crossroads by Jonathan Franzen is another book that I'm happy that I picked because it made it into the early rounds and I read it and really enjoyed it. I understand that it's going to be the first of a kind of mini-series looking at the lives of these characters over some time. And I absolutely love that because I feel like these are characters that I would love to get to know over long periods of time. I'd wanted to read another book by Jonathan Franzen. I have his book Corrections on my really long, extensive TBR, books that I want to read this year or soon in the future. And it's a book that I've owned for a while, didn't get to. So I'm happy that I picked Crossroads, happy that it made it into the Booktube prize early rounds and I read it. So yeah, next slide. So on the next screenshot, we only have 1 title that I submitted, and it is What Storm, What Thunder by Miriam J.A. Chansey. And I can't recall now if I had read it yet at the time when I chose it for the Booktube prize consideration. But this book is fantastic. We read it for the RunwrightReads book club, and I can't recall if we read it this year. I think we may have read it at the end of last year. But in any case, this is a fantastic book. It explores a little bit of what happened before, during, and in the aftermath of the earthquake in Haiti in 2010. And it explores that catastrophe, that crisis, through lots of different perspectives. And I'm not going to go into a full review. I think I did one here on the channel. If I can find it, I'll link it down below so you could go see what I said or hear what I said about this book in other spaces. But yeah, if you haven't yet read What Storm, What Thunder by Miriam J.A. Chansey, let me just prop it up right here. On the next slide, we have a few titles, including The Five Wounds by Kristen Valdez Quaid, which I have since read because of judging the Booktube Prize. This is actually a finalist. The Liar's Dictionary by Ellie Williams, I chose, but I still haven't read it. I heard some really good reviews about this book, so that's why I had picked it, but I haven't yet read it. Then there's Lincoln Highway by Amor Tolles. I know that this author got a lot of recognition because of the earlier book, A Gentleman in Moscow, and I hadn't yet read this book. I've since read it to judge the prize. It's a chunker, so can't talk to you about it yet because this is a finalist for the Booktube Prize, but yeah, I picked it. Yay me. And then of course, one of my favorite books from last year, The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honoré Fannin Jeffers. I'm not spoiling anything for saying that is one of my favorites from last year because it is a finalist and I'm judging. I'm not comparing it to the other books. I'm just saying, if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I love this book. It was one of my favorite books that I mentioned in my favorites of the year video. So yeah, really love this book. So can't say whether I love it more or less than the other finalists, but it is a finalist, so yeah, I picked it. Then of course, The Promise by Damon Galgot, which won the Booker Prize last year. I hadn't yet read it, still haven't read it, but I thought it should be considered for the Booktube Prize just because it won the Booker last year. It didn't actually make it to the finals of the Booktube Prize, which is fine, but I'd chosen it. The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. was a book that I had not yet read, but I know that there was a lot of buzz surrounding this book, so I had initially put it on the list. It didn't make it to the finals. I think it advanced through the round, but it didn't make it to the finals, which is fine. I still picked it in the beginning. And of course, The Sentence by Louise Erdrick. At the time when I chose this book for the list, I hadn't yet read this book. I've since read it for an earlier round of judging the Booktube Prize, and I really enjoy books by Louise Erdrick. This is my third or fourth thing that I have read from her. Louise Erdrick is a Native American woman from Minneapolis, and in this book she covers a little bit of what was happening in Minneapolis during the first year of the pandemic. I can't believe we're saying this, the first year, right? But she covers a little bit about what was happening in bookstores because of the COVID-19 pandemic and people's response to it, but also covering a little bit of the execution, we're calling it that, the execution of George Floyd and the uprising that caused. A lot of that is covered in this book as a kind of a response to what was happening. So highly recommend this book if you haven't yet read anything by Louise Erdrick. But just know that I picked her. I picked her in the beginning. The next slide has a few titles. A couple of them I've read. Of Women and Salt by Gabriela Garcia, I have not yet read. I chose it because I'd heard some good things when the book was first released. I think it was a Book of the Month Club pick, which we'll talk about in another video. But yeah, I haven't yet read it. The next title, Oh William by Elizabeth Strout. I read this last year. The publisher sent me an early release of the finished copy, and I read it, loved it. Happy to see that this book is a finalist for the Booker Prize this year. It didn't make it to the finals of the Booktube Prize, which is fine. Caleb Azuma Nelson's novel Open Water. Read that last year. Actually, I got a copy from, I think I won a giveaway on Instagram, and the person offered to send me a book from my wish list, their pick, and this is the one that they chose. And I read it, really enjoyed that book. It's a small novel. If you haven't yet read it, it's a book about young people living in England, young black people living in England, and a lot about lyricism and how music is a big part of our lives. Love that book. So if you haven't yet read it, love that book. So if you haven't yet read it, check it out. It didn't make it to the finals, obviously. And then Ruth Ozake's The Book of Form and Emptiness. I haven't yet read this one. Ruth Ozake's novel, A Tale for the Time Being, is one of my favorite books of all time. I've wanted to read more from her, haven't yet. This is the only thing that I've read from her. So at some point I will get to The Book of Form and Emptiness, I'm pretty sure, but no, I hadn't yet read it when I picked it for this prize, and I haven't read it since. Terrible, right? So here is the final slide. Colson Whitehead's Harlem Shuffle was a book that I buddy read with Columbus and Rosalie. Hi guys, if you're watching. And I absolutely love this book. It's set in Harlem in the previous generation. And Colson Whitehead is like, he captures the spirit and the essence of Harlem and people trying to do good, but being pulled back into like the underlife because of their associations with people from their past, people who are family, and you can't turn your back on family. Love this book. Love this book. It didn't make it to the finals in the Booktube prize, which is fine. Just read that book if you get a chance. Just pick it up. Colson Whitehead is not lacking for attention. He's won the Pulitzer Prize twice in the last, I'm going to say 10 years, because it may not have been 5. He won the Pulitzer Prize for The Underground Railroad, and he won the Pulitzer Prize again for his book, The Nickel Boys. Imbola Buis, How Beautiful We Were, is a book that I should have read before. I picked it, I chose it to be on the list because I'd heard good things. But I'd had a copy and I hadn't gotten to it. Only reading it now because it is a finalist for the Booktube Prize. I shouldn't say that. I'm getting to it now because it's a finalist for the Booktube Prize. I'm judging, so I can't discuss it. But I should have read this book before. But I chose it because I had heard other people who had read it said good things. Then Cherie Jones, How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House. This is a book that we read for the Run Right Reads book club last year, I think. I think it was last year. But what a fantastic book. It's so immersive, so gripping, so intense. Trigger warnings for a lot of things. A lot of bad things happen in this book, and it may trigger readers who are sensitive to certain issues, but I still highly recommend this book because of what it shows of life in paradise and how paradise and hell could be the same place for the different people who are inhabiting that space. Highly recommend that book. Kazuo Ishiguro's Clara and the Sun, I haven't yet read, but I did read Remains of the Day by him and Buried Giant, which is a very different kind of book. This won the Booker years ago, in long time. The Buried Giant is a very different kind of book. And because I read 2 things from him that were different, but also both really enjoyable to me, I thought that I would like his new book. Haven't yet read it. And I can't really think right now if I've heard anyone speak about it. Like, I haven't read or watched a review of the book. So I don't know. But yeah, that's one of the books that I chose. Liberty by Caitlin Greenidge is on the list, and I read this. I actually read this last year, which is when it was released, and I didn't realize it was a brand new book. It reads like an older book, which is a good thing. If I could find a video where I discuss this book, I'll link it in the description box down below. Sometimes I say I'm going to review books and I don't actually get to them, so forgive me for that. Chalk it all up to mommy brain and mommy activities. But if I can find a review, I'll link it so you can hear a little bit more of what I said about that book. Finally, Matrix by Lauren Groff, an author that I've heard a lot about and haven't yet read anything by. So at some point I will pick up one of Lauren Groff's books, but because I've heard good things, I chose it. So yeah, those are 19 titles that I initially submitted to be considered for the Booktube Prize, and I'm really excited that a few of them made it all the way to the finals. So it means that I can pick winners. So give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more. We'll be back soon with another video, another bookish video. Would love to chat with you in the comments down below. Let me know how many of these 19 you've read. I've read 11. Of course, my score is a little inflated because I've been judging these books through the rounds. I didn't just judge fiction this year, because then my score would probably be higher. So yeah, let's chat down there, and until we come back for another video, happy reading. Bye.